How y'all's doing? How y'all's doing? Did you enjoy the NFL playoffs like I did this past weekend? You got to love those first 2 weekends of the playoffs, by the way, because they hit you with games on both Saturday and Sunday, taking 2 full winter weekends off the board. Like, you're that much closer to spring, even though you're not even remotely close. It's miles away. Global shifting, it won't be here till June. But as I mentioned last week, I was in Florida through the new year, so I came back. I finally got a chance to get fully situated. I went through all the mail that piled up while I was gone. So, like, now we're, whatever the hell today is, we're mid to end like, are we in mid-January? I don't even know the date. That's how lost I am. But I was going through all the mail that piled up, and I'm retroactively opening these Christmas cards. Like, there was a whole bunch of them. And maybe this just seems weird to me because it's so long after the fact. Like, Christmas seems like a while ago now. But the process of sending Christmas cards really kind of seems a little weird to me now that I'm a little removed from it. I'm just opening these cards, looking at these pictures. Like, if you have a 2-year-old, a 5-year-old, sure, send that progress report picture. But last week, I opened a card of 2 grown-ass men I'm related to. One was 19, the other was 17, and these 2 men are what? I'm going to put them on my fridge and have them standing there looking at me? What is this? I don't want to see these fucking guys on my fridge staring at me while I froth my oat milk and put it in my Nespresso coffee. But, you know, they're your family, so I guess you gotta send pictures. Like, I have a cousin, we hardly ever speak. Saw him on Thanksgiving, we started immediately arguing about Matt Barzal's contract. That's family. That's real friends. You pick up where you left off. You don't need to be sending Christmas cards of 19 years old. Like, when it's real friends, you only get Irish goodbyes. If you're not true friends with people, true friends don't say goodbye. You just leave. All right? It's only rude if you don't even know the person well enough to the point where you kind of don't know where they stand. So if they give you an official goodbye, you're like, okay, you know, I think me and this guy are getting along. But when you know somebody for a long, you just leave. You just walk out. It's been cemented in the level of friendship. All right. Last week, I spoke about how brutal the cold was, and trust me, after spending the holiday in Florida, it was. But what I quickly forgot is how your inner gauge readjusts after enduring brutal single-digit temperatures like what we had on Saturday. After dealing with 6 degrees, all of a sudden 42. Oh, you are ready for the beach. It was 45 degrees the other day after the 6, even including today. This is why I'm wearing a t-shirt. I went out for a jog. I was all smiles. I had like a prancing motion going on. Like I had a joyous prance. That's what I was doing. I saw a family, waved at them in the car until they got down the block, and then I stopped running like the fat slob that I am. And then in a block and a half, when I caught my breath, just did that quick sprint to justify my inability to not run long distance. You know what I'm saying? I just stopped running, realized I was a slob, and then ran a sprint as if that justified what I did. Come on. I know some of you have done something like that. You ever do it? You ever run harder because you saw somebody and now you feel like a random person you don't know is judging your pace? The classic example would be is if you're jogging, like as Sebastian Maniscalco calls it, you're doing a valet jog, you know? And then out of nowhere, you spot a cute girl down the block walking her dog. And then you immediately become an Olympic sprinter and book it to the end of the block. Yeah. What is that going to do, by the way? What is that going to do, that sprint by the hot girl walking her dog? Are you hoping to magically cross paths with this girl on a night out? And then let's say you run into her. Against all odds, the random dog walker and you end up at the same place. What? You approach them at the bar And now you got a better chance with them because you ran that single sprint to the end of the block? We are such stupid people. And by we, I mean me. The hot girl semi-sprinters are not too dissimilar from the high school peel-out guy. Remember this guy when you turned 16 or whatever? He was the first guy who got his license out of everyone, so he had to showcase how great it was to have a car by peeling out of the parking lot like he was Johnny Tran trying to make his way to Race Wars. And then, when you lean out into the street and you look down at the end of the block, you see the guy with his brake lights on coming to a complete stop at the red light when he thought nobody was looking. I was looking. I always was, and I still am, for that matter. There's also, see, this is where I would need a guest. This is where I need a guest for my sips. Just to be like, we got a guy taking a sip, and then back to me. There's this scummy horror movie, like when it comes to the disappearing. Remember that the guy who sped to the end of the block, and then you saw him, because when I was thinking about that, it jogged. I have a weird mind; it takes wacky right turns. It reminded me of this scummy horror movie from the early 2000s called Valentine, featuring David Boreanaz. My guess is a lot of people don't know who that is. He's from Bones, or like one of those CW shows, Dark Angel. What? You want to know something about David Boreanaz? Great prank call name, by the way. Hi, I'd like to order 2 large pies for pickup, please. Sure. Can I have a name for the order? Yeah, it's David Boreanaz. Thanks, Dave. Your order will be ready in 15. Actually, it's David, but thank you. So before I get to Valentine, David Boreanaz, he's in that movie, Valentine. When I was a photo double on the show Bones, I know I always tell you guys I'm going to tell you more LA stories. This guy, he was not a happy camper. This guy, David Boreanaz, if you want, look him up after. You would know his face. He has that face. You go, oh, that guy? He got so livid at any of the extras who had their phone with them on the set. Now, it's one thing if we're talking about Christian Bale going off on someone as he's trying to get into character for The Machinist, where he's eating an apple. That's the only thing he's eaten in a year. But I caught Boreanaz on his iPad watching a Flyers playoff game off to the side. Now, Dave, I know you ain't watching, and I fully support the viewing of the Flyers playoff game. I would definitely do that with the Islanders, but you don't watch your Flyers playoff game and then berate these poor extras for having their phone. And not poor because of the situation Boreanaz put them in, but poor because they actually have no money. That's what extras have. Non-union extras, the ones you see on television, they all make minimum wage to the bottom cent. So if you want to know how much a non-union extra makes, just Google what's the lowest amount you can pay somebody in a state, and that's what they make. The solid $8.22 per hour, or whatever the hell it is in California now. But anyway, in this movie, Valentine, there's a scene that depicts the concept I was talking to you about those interval sprints, or whatever the hell they are. The first part of the scene is the classic suspense buildup that you'd see in a horror movie where the girl is trying to evade a killer that's chasing her, so she runs into a room and hides in a closet. You've definitely seen scenes like this. It's the vintage Laurie Strode in Halloween hiding in the closet until Michael Myers bursts in there. Great thought process, by the way. Great thought process when you're trying to evade a serial killer. Hey, you know where the killer will never look? In the big thing with closable doors that a human can easily hide in. Either that or hiding under the bed like Liam Neeson's daughter in Taken. Those are the two chalk hiding spots when somebody's coming for you in movies. Honestly, here's what you should do if you're in one of those movie scenarios where a serial killer is coming after you. Hopefully you're not. But if you're going to run into the closet, leave the folding doors wide open and then just tuck yourself up against the side. That way, at least when this guy walks in, maybe they'll glance at the closet and think, what are the odds that that person was scared for their life, ran in the closet, and forgot to close the doors? I'm not wasting my time. They're definitely not in there. What, is she tucked up against the side? Yes, she is. Or she should be, at least. Well, in this scene, the one in Valentine, this girl's hiding in the closet, as you could imagine, peeking through the crevices, all scared. And the killer, he's not right outside the door like Michael Myers was in Halloween. He was in the hallway, looking into the room from the hallway, so there's a good distance between the two. However, he's staring directly into the closet. You're seeing him from her vantage point, and it looks like he is dead set on going in there and opening the closet. And he holds the look from the hallway for an awkward amount of time, like 30 seconds. But then, after a long period of suspense, finally continues down the hallway, and you, as the viewer and the girl in the closet, breathe a sigh of relief. Like you know that moment where the suspenseful music starts playing? And then the guy just pops his head back and looks for another 40 seconds. Only to re-walk away and bring down the suspense. I always thought that was an original idea. You know, I tell you guys, I love those horror movies, so I'm always surprised when someone gets me with something good. That was a good one. That was a good one. Never checks the closet despite staring at it for a full 3 minutes. Clever way to build suspense. Spoiler alert in that movie, by the way. Boreanaz, that flyer's fuck, he was the killer. Sorry, ruined the movie that you never were going to watch anyway. I hope they ask you that on the final question of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and then you remember when you got mad at me for spoiling the end of Valentine. You know, I always promise you guys I'm going to talk about Los Angeles more. I told you that Boreanaz story with the extra. What's going on? Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. I always promise I'm going to talk about Los Angeles, and I just told you the story about Boreanaz and the extras he got pissed at for looking at their phone. And I want to tell you something about these extras. Let's go to Tinseltown, tell some LA stories. Do you know when you're watching a movie on television and you see those extras in the background, sometimes when there are so many of them, you're just like, yeah, they probably just use people on the streets of Manhattan. No. All those extras are brought in and have to be paid just to appear as little dots on the background of the movies and TV shows you're watching. Just like the ones Boreanaz got pissed off for bringing in their cell phones. What you probably didn't know, to sound like Ace Ventura, was that a certain percentage of these extras who are brought on have to be union workers per union rules, meaning like the Screen Actors Guild. So a certain amount of the extras have to be in the Screen Actors Guild. And what does that mean? You can't screw them. Their wages and their working conditions are guaranteed per the union contract. But, like I said, only a certain amount, a certain percentage of the extras brought on are union. After that, you're allowed to hire as many non-union extras as you want in a movie, meaning 0 SAG conditions, meaning you're getting paid a grand total of minimum wage to the last cent. And do you know what this creates when you're on a set and some people are making this and other people are making... There is a class system that develops on the set. Some of it's unspoken and some of it is pretty overt. It creates a messed up class system, something as simple as like the daily vouchers for the non-union members were blue and for the union members were yellow. So if someone was walking around with a blue voucher, they got the look of the unvaccinated player in the NFL. Like the blue vouchers were the unvaccinated and the standard yellow SAG members were the vaccinated. And here's a story I will never, ever forget. Ever. And the Rock means ever. When everyone was dismissed for lunch, this was on the set of Two Broke Girls. This was right around the time the show first started, and it 100% took place on the Warner Brothers lot on Barham and Burbank. 100% certain. On this particular day, it was one of the rare days in Los Angeles where there was a full downpour. And sometimes you'd go a full year without seeing a drop of rain. Full downpour. And this is not a place in the Northeast who knows how to handle it. Often when there's a downpour there's like flooding. It's a nightmare. Well, they broke us for lunch, and all the union members were lined up and led into the nice, warm Warner Brothers commissary, or commissary. The Warner Brothers commissary, where there was a full menu, multiple chefs behind a grill, and you got to order whatever you wanted. So that's where the union members got to go. Meanwhile, as this one line of union members was being escorted into the commissary to the left, there was a second line of all non-union extras, and I'll never forget this visual, veering off to the right. And this line ran parallel to the commissary line, but instead it veered to a series of blue tents outdoors in the middle of the rain downpour. Look, they say you're never supposed to make Holocaust comparisons, but I'll never forget that line splitting, and it looked like the opening scene from X-Men when Magneto as a boy got separated from his parents. So that will be my comparison. The worst part about it for these non-union extras, the tents were set up right next to the commissary, which had these huge windows. So as these people were filling their cups with porridge or whatever the hell they put in that huge tub, they would look to their left and see everybody else laughing with their chicken BLTs, including me. God. Oh man, it's messed up. I cannot tell you how many things go down like that in Hollywood and Los Angeles, stuff that you would never hear about, nobody knows about, but it's taking place right now. Right now, as we speak, there are two different tiers of meals being eaten on the set of Riverdale. And like, I know every industry has its dirty underbelly, but entertainment, it's got a dirty underbelly, it's got a dirty grundle, it's got a dirty fupa, you name it, that city incessantly fucking, even though I don't have to be, but you name it, that city has it, which is quite ironic coming from the place that preaches how it fosters an inclusive environment, and they do that from the plush confines of the Warner Brothers commissary as they're watching you stand out in the rain holding a cup of gruel like the simpleton they think you are. How's it going? We doing all right? So, I'd mentioned that movie Valentine, which was an early 2000s horror movie. Now, last week, I briefly mentioned Airborne, which was a 1993 movie featuring Seth Green and Jack Black, where this cool kid from Southern California is forced to move to Ohio. Well, I rewatched it this past weekend, and I ended up renting it on YouTube. But before I could actually rent it, they gave me the option to buy it instead. And that brings us to our scam of the week. The buy now for $13.99, stream now for $3.99 scam. This is when you want to watch something that isn't available on any of the 15 streaming services for whatever reason, so you resort to paying for it on Amazon or YouTube or Apple or whatever. And you search for the movie. You can rent it for $3.99, or you can, quote unquote, buy it for $16.99. And regardless of whichever one you choose, the same thing is just going to start playing. But I suppose if you choose the buy it now feature and give them $15 extra, you can rewatch that movie that you haven't even watched once in 20 years again sometime in the next 20 years, assuming the company you rented it from is still even in business, or the movie hasn't been yanked off the shelves like Blank Check because of some fabricated controversy. So when choosing the option to buy, you're buying a movie that you can't hold in your hand, you can't give to someone, you can't display on a shelf, and can't access on any of your own devices if you ever forget your password. Oh, that's owning it all right. That's like me allowing all you people to watch one of my videos for 3 days and ask you for $2, or I can say, you know what, you can own it forever for $20, unless I delete it, archive it, deactivate my account, block you, or get banned. But if all of that doesn't happen, oh yeah, then you definitely own the video. It's the buy or rent scam. So, Rented Airborne, 1993 movie, and you know what I thought was crazy? How freaking unbelievably crisp the movie looked. Like it was cocoa crisp, Cullen crisp, cookie crisp. It was full crisp. It was unbelievable. It's amazing how pristine these older movies look in 1080p after they're remastered. Like I swear to you, if it wasn't for the baggy clothes, a couple of wacky hairstyles, you'd think the damn thing was shot like 2 weeks ago. And yeah, there were those high school students who, looked a decade too old, but you always get that. At least in this movie, they didn't look 37. It was more like 27. And the first scene of the movie, it was actually from the exact beach town that I lived in. I didn't know that. I remember I watched it as a kid, lived in California, just rewatched it, and I'm seeing the town that I lived in, and it looked exactly the same. Exactly the same. And that's the thing about when you watch older movies from previous generations. Like if this was 2001 right now and you were watching a movie from the 80s, you were watching it in 360p on your VCR. So when you turned on Coming to America with Eddie Murphy, you literally thought like, oh, New York City just doesn't have bright colors. It felt like if you were brought to that very scene, you were brought onto the streets of New York with Eddie Murphy in Coming to America. People were actually blurrier. A person's face 1 foot away from you would be blurrier than it is today. That's how it felt when you were watching older movies, a couple decades back. And it's just a beautiful advantage that you youngsters out there have right now to be able to watch quality movies from previous generations and not feel like they came from the Mesozoic era. And here's how I know that's the case. But first, a sip. A few years back, my brother and we tossed on a horror movie. Yes, another horror movie. It's my thing. Kind of force it to be other people's thing. We watched Joyride. We watched Joyride with Paul Walker on HBO Go. The version, it had to be 1080p minimum. It might have even been 4K. I saw this thing. It looked brand new, but this movie was from right about 20 years ago, probably early 2000s. In this movie, Paul Walker and my man Steve Zahn, underrated funny guy, they're in a car and they start fucking with some trucker on the CB radio. And they start trying to fake flirt with him, saying there's some girl. I guess it was the original Catfish when you got on a CB radio and messed with some horny trucker. But of course, because it's a horror movie, the trucker eventually tracks them down, finds them, and starts terrorizing them on the highway. So my brother and I are watching this go down. My brother just goes, what the hell is this? Take out your phone and call the cops. Because the movie looked so brand new with the remastering, he simply thought it must just have been a few years ago. So that's a great thing. It's a great thing that movies from previous generations can be enjoyed. That's probably one of the only downsides to watching an older movie that's remastered, because this revelation in remastering movies and TV shows, it's a blessing for this younger generation who, let's be honest, they're forbidden from enjoying any sort of actual entertainment due to the shackles that have been slapped on the entertainment industry now. But with the remastering, at least kids who are 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, they can partake in what I call the Benjamin Button style of media consumption, where you watch new movies every year, but in the opposite direction. So instead of 2002, it's 2008. And in 2023, it's 2007. 2024, 2006. And you keep going until you get to 1980. And now that brings me to the title of this episode, No Cake in the 80s. You probably read that, you probably hear that and think, oh, he's going to talk about how everyone's fatter now. No, not at all. Although that is obviously true. But no cake in the 80s refers to something else. As I've stated many times, including today, I would categorically describe movies from the 80s and 90s as head and shoulders superior to the current crop of garbage that's being put out there. That being said, there is a rather fascinating conundrum that is developing before my eyes. There's one characteristic from the 80s that is not better at all. Asses. Cake. Asses that you see in the 80s and 90s, specifically in movies, would be the worst asses on Instagram by a country mile. In many of these old movies, there will be a scene that shows a really hot girl in slow motion music. Like, you know what I'm talking about, the slow motion music entrance, which means the most perfect girl was cast at the time. And in these movies, I've watched a few of them recently, when it cuts to the girl's body, nothing, niente, drek, none of these girls have 12% of your average Instagram ass. And remember, like I said, the girls who are chosen to be in these movies are supposed to have the best asses at the time. So basically, I'm telling you that the best asses in the 80s would be bottom-ranked asses here on Instagram right now. They would be the Jalen Rager of asses. Awful. And I will post some of these on my social media soon, so you guys know I'm not making this stuff up. I was watching Revenge of the Nerds 2 the other night, Nerds in Paradise, where the nerds are in Miami. They're in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, dozens of girls on the beach in bikinis at the pool, zero asses. I wasn't looking at asses for stimulation purposes. I was looking at asses out of curiosity, because once I spotted the first and then I spotted a second, then I'm checking asses. I've seen the movie many times. I don't even have to check the plot anymore. I'm just tracking asses, and that's what I did. And they were all non-existent. And then I got to thinking, why were there no asses in the 80s? Why was there no cake in the 80s? Was it because, coincidentally, there was less cake being eaten in the 80s? Well, like, what dietary trend or ass-plumping chemical was injected into our foods along the way that have caused our asses to grow like they took a mushroom from the Mario Brothers? Like, girls out there, if there's a girl listening and you're self-conscious about your ass because of what you're seeing on Instagram right now, your ass blows all the top asses from the 80s away. This is so wild to me. I remember the Pam Anderson Wave, where everything was about big fake jugs, like Sable in the WWE with the big handprints on them. But what the hell happened to the asses? You think it was caused by like some of the fad diets? Did Jenny Craig give birth to the big ass? Or one of these other diets? It may be a diet that qualifies for our second scam of the week. The second scam of the week is intermittent fasting, the word I can't say, intermittent fasting. I'm sure you or someone you know claims they do it. People who say they're intermittent fasting are actually just using that diet to justify eating like an absolute slob over the course of 8 hours. If you don't know what that is, by the way, intermittent fasting, you eat for 8 hours and don't eat for the next 16. So you get people who end up eating like an absolute tank and then go, no, I'm intermittent fasting. I'm just getting it in there in the 8 hour window. So what you're actually seeing is all the meals shoved into the 8 hour stretch. Nobody has to eat for more than 8 hours when you've had a full large Domino's pie with cheesy bread and Cinesticks. You're good for the next 20 hours. I feel like every diet can be somewhat included in a scam of the week, but I guess they're more so like scam of the year, scam of the decades. I had this one friend, he told me he went paleo. We'd go out. This guy's eating endless honey barbecue wings. But telling me, oh, no, don't worry, it's paleo. It's paleo. It was modeled after the cavemen, so, I mean, it must stand the test of time. All these honey barbecue wings are clearly part of the caveman diet. Well, there actually is one slight difference between you and the primate, and that is that the caveman had to physically run down a wild animal and kill it with its bare hands. Think that maybe required some extra energy? Think that was a physical workout? You've been watching Red Zone since 1 o'clock. It's a little different when you're crushing those honey barbecue wings. And something tells me that if I looked at a caveman's face after his meal, it would not bear any resemblance to what I'm looking at across from the table at me after that meal. Like, I just knew when I looked at my friend, this cannot be a worthwhile diet, okay? If staying within the parameters of a diet yields that face that I'm currently seeing at the other end of the table, then you might need to find yourself a new diet, because that's one of those issues where, like, you know how they say the cure is worse than the disease? Well, that's what paleo seems to be. So, not sure if any of those are responsible for the big asses. But one thing I can say for sure, there's no shortage of them now. There's a surplus. We had no ass. Now we have endless ass. Ass now are like the pandemic ventilators. You can't hand these things away. Way too many of them. All right. Any questions? I'm sorry. Once I get going. Okay, Jamie Lee Curtis. True Lies 1994. Well, look, maybe my library is limited, but there is a scene that you can look on YouTube right now, because I know it. Well, the thumbnail for this video is actually the ass from the scene that I'm referring to, and that is Jason. I believe it's Friday the 13th 8, part 8. Jason Goes to New York, which is hilarious. And there's a girl who tries to seduce her teacher, and she does a slow reveal where she takes off the robe. This woman has negative ass. 0 ass. And like I said, this one was chosen to have the best one. So if you want to see what I'm talking about, look up Jason Goes to New York. I think we're almost at the end here. To my man out there, who I didn't get to last week, I hope my rant was sufficient. To everybody else, thank you so much for coming back. Speak now or forever hold your peace. I'm going to try to read some of this, because no matter how many times you guys won't use that question thing in the corner. Let's see. What do I care? If you made it this far, I can't have your cake and eat it too. That's so funny. So part of the reason if I'm glistening because I have such bright lights in here, because I need to take this video, it looks crazy unless I apply something to it. So I just click the filters. Like right now, I can put on the mustache. You guys, you want to play a little game? You want to play a game? Let's do it. Ready? Let's have some fun. Hey, it's a me. You know, I used to be able to do all the Mario Brothers voices. I don't know if I can still do this. Let's see this. You gotta cut me some slack here. I haven't done this in years. Oh man, I might butcher this. Hey, it's a me, Mario.
Hey, it's a me, Luigi.
Hey, it's a me, a Wario.
Hey, it's a me, Waluigi.